Hi, this is going to be our presentation for Team Three's Senior Capstone project. I'm Evan Williams.
I'm Cameron Arnett.
I'm Joshua Brewer.
And I am Michael Childers.
And we're going to demonstrate and explain some of the code that went into our project today. Michael, since we're here on the login.aspx page, could you go ahead and explain some of the code you used for the login page of our application?
Sure thing. So, to start off with, for our what we call the VAX data patient database, we started with a login page to ensure patient confidentiality for keeping with laws involving things of that nature. We're starting with a simple encryption using a 64-bit string. I'm sorry. We're using a 64-bit encryption code to change the passwords around to push away thoughts of hackers and things. Essentially what happens is on the login page, you'll have a space to type in the login and a button that says login. If an incorrect login is attempted, the login page will tell you you have an incorrect password and allow you to try again. If a correct login is attempted, it'll compare that string to the encrypted string that's then decrypted. If there's a match, it then sends you to the patient database.
And I'll go ahead and demonstrate that here. So as we can see, this is the VAX data vaccine distribution information, and here's the password field. And so if I type in an incorrect password, whatever, it says incorrect password. But then I could also go in and type in one of the correct passwords, such as bossman, successful admin login, or I believe it's pass1 is an employee login. And so typing in those passwords, as you can see, redirects to a different page. It's the login success.aspx up here, which redirects from login.aspx. And then it's the same thing here, login admin success.aspx.
And with that, it was going to redirect to our database design. So this login would allow you to, would allow the database to be secure, right? You wouldn't be able to access it unless you were able to log in through this, and that's our intention here.
Yeah, in the final product, the landing page would be this login page, and you would log in, and it would redirect you to the patient database page, which we will explain in just a second. So if we go here, this is the patient vaccine solution, or like project that I've made. So to start with, I'm just going to go ahead and to run it and demonstrate it running. So if I click that, it takes a second, and then it pops up, and you get a very brief welcome screen, and it says to access the database, click the Patients tab. Right, we click the Patients tab,
and this is what you'd be seeing after you made a successful login to the database, be it the admin or employee login.
Right, a more finalized version would have the home page replaced with a login page that redirects to the patient's page once you've provided a correct password. Once you redirect to this page, you get a list of all the patients. For demonstration purposes right now, there's just one patient. It's my sample information. But from this page, you can do anything to add patients, remove them, or edit their patient profile entries. So if I click on New Patient Profile, that redirects to the Create page. And here you can see a number of options to create a new patient. So some of these are required, some of these aren't. As you can see, if I hit Create, the only fields that are required are first name, last name, and age. So if I go ahead and type those in with some sample information, and hit Create, then now we have a second entry, right? And say that, like, onboarding, that's all the information you got, but later you decided you wanted to go in and add more information. you can click this green edit button here, and that takes you to this edit page. And you can see it says edit ID equals 5. That's because technically this is the 5th entrance into the database. And so you could update that from here. And you could add a phone number for, illustration purposes. We'll just make that. And you hit update, and it takes you back here, and you can see that the information's been updated. In here as well, you can also delete a patient profile, and it prompts you asking if you are sure you want to delete. You click OK, and now that patient's profile is removed from the database. And that change does get pushed to and saved on the database that the program is accessing.
And this is just a local version, of course, so the actual push, had this database been implemented somewhere, or if it was going to be, this would be live on the server, of course.
Right. So this program as a prototype is running on a local server. So if we go back to Visual Studio and kill the program, we can take a look at some of these things in a more detailed way. So this is just the edit.cs HTML page, and this has the form with the method type post, which is what allows it to push to the database. And as you can see, we use ASP helper tags to point at which fields in the database that the field in the form is connected to. And so using this ASP helper tag to point at the database and say specifically what columns and what fields we are editing, that allows a much quicker and cleaner way of creating forms to update the database. We also have the create.cs HTML, and it's essentially the same thing. But as you can see here, it saves changes, and here it pushes to the database, right? So it finds the patient that you are editing the entry for, and it changes the fields for that patient. And then on the create, it creates a new patient profile with a new unique ID, etc. And go ahead.
Our concept for the patient profile was for it to be easily expanded upon. So now that we have the framework to make all these pushes and everything has been like the groundwork has been laid, it makes it much easier to go in and, like, let's say, for instance, we wanted to document whether just a simple checkbox like the patient health box is there now. Let's say we wanted to document whether or not they've had a certain vaccine, for example, the COVID, some form of the COVID vaccine. We can just easily add the checkbox to designate whether or not they've had it. And this was built so that these changes could be made very easily, and nothing gets the ability to push to the server has already been made. So really, it's just constructing new fields for whatever the database may need.
Exactly. So this was left fairly intentionally vague to leave it to where it could be applicable to multiple vaccine scenarios. In this instance, patient health is a Boolean data type that connects to whether or not the patient has a prior health condition relevant to the disease that the vaccine is for. So we left that intentionally vague just so it would be something that could be applicable outside of the current situation of the COVID-19 vaccines. So like he said, you could easily add in more information, and patient health just indicates like whether they have a health condition that makes them more susceptible to whatever disease you're currently talking about. With COVID, for example, that could be asthma, obesity, or any number of other like heart conditions, etc. Those are all health conditions that are relevant to the things that COVID-19 affects, but for a different disease, it might be different.
And we felt that it was important to have that flag, with the problems, that various health conditions could present when getting a vaccine.
Right. Here you can actually see the public class patients, which is where we declare all of the data types, and make patient ID, which is the primary key. We make that the unique field. And then you have patient first name, middle name, last name, age, health, and phone number. Here is actually the code that creates the table and the database in the local server if the database does not already exist. So this is the code that allows the application to run even if the database doesn't already exist on the server that's being used, which in an enterprise setting would not be super applicable, but in this prototype setting it's fairly useful for ensuring that it can be tested on different machines. This is simply like a layout page. It just it's a default layout that has the navigation bars for the landing page. Here we have the index. This is what creates the table that displays the patient information. And so if I pull it up again and go here, if there are any patients in the database, it will display all of the fields that are in that table, all of the columns that are in the table patients. And it will display the information for each patient that is in the table. But if we, and that code is here, so if model.patients.count is greater than 0, so if there are any patients, if there are any profiles in the database, then it will run the code that displays this table. And for every patient, or for every profile in the table, it will create a new row that displays their information, along with the delete and edit buttons, which again use these ASP helper tags. Otherwise, it will display that there are no patient profiles, right? So if I go back quickly and delete this, then you see there's no patient information available, and that's all that page does, is basically sees if there is patient information. If there is, then it iterates through every patient in the table and displays their information. Again, this is just a form for creating a new patient profile.
And this was also kind of built with the intention that you could potentially have like pages with separate patient profiles, whichever way the database wanted to go.
And this is the app settings. So this is where we actually point to the server that's being used and the database. And so because it declares a database, that the code that I showed earlier, add patient to DB, that's where, like, if it doesn't find this database, then it creates it, and it just goes ahead and sets that it's a trusted connection. But so this is like the name of the server on my machine. But for example, if you were going to run this on a different machine, then you would need to replace this string specifically with whatever the name of your server is, or else it won't work.
And typically the name of your server is going to be your system name.
Right.
You can easily find if you're running Windows 10, you can find the system configuration tab.
Yeah, by default, the server name is the same as the device name. It's just different on my machine.
And this is important in getting the prototype that we've constructed to actually run.
Yeah.
since we aren't hosting it on a server.
Yeah, since it is hosted locally, we have to do it that way rather than have an active online server. And so these are sort of all the things that we've run through so far. This is our prototype. And so as you can see, we have all the functionality we need to expand this database. Now, there is no seed data available with the project solution, but as you can see, once it's running, you can add as many patients as you need, and you can add all of their information, or some of their information, or none of their information, if you just don't want to add a new patient. So yeah, does anybody have anything else to add?
The only limitation that this database has is the amount of storage that the host device has. So this can have up to thousands of different patients at one time. So it's very expandable.
Right. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
kind of our intention, of course, to make sure that while the prototype, of course, we have the basic features in place. We were more concerned with making sure that the prototype was constructed in such a way that it could be very easily expandable. Which is what some of our plans were. If we were to continue working on this database, of course, would be to expand on the patient profile with any number of things, including an entire list of what vaccines a patient's had and what date maybe they have had it, when they're scheduled to go for their next vaccine. Anything like that. The entire purpose of the database was built so that these things could be easily built on top of the groundwork.
Right, and so it's not just a database that you can search for specific patients. And you have a list of patients that's set in stone, and you can find their profiles. You can create new ones. You can delete existing ones. You can edit existing ones, and then you can also view every existing patient profile currently. And that was sort of the whole idea of it, was that it would be something that could be constantly updated as the situation surrounding a disease or a vaccine changes.
Exactly. And this is especially one of the more important features of our database, is that it is capable of handling if, say, a new virus or a new vaccine for COVID were to be developed. It is capable of immediately being able to integrate that very easily, and then storing that and having that information available to hospitals in the database.
Mm-hmm. So if nobody else has anything to add, then I believe that that's all we have to say today. I'd like to thank you for your time, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to demonstrate this project that we've worked on.